Helen Keller's experience of the world brings us directly to the heart of the question you're raising. Can someone without traditional sensory access to certain aspects of the world, like sight, ever truly know the redness of red? This question isn't just about sensory deprivation. It's a question about qualia itself, the subjective, ineffable experiences of consciousness. Let's think about this carefully. Helen Keller was both deaf and blind from an early age, meaning that she never had the direct sensory experiences associated with either sound or vision. For most people, the experience of redness is tied to the physical sensation of seeing that color. The redness of a ripe apple, the glow of a sunset, these are visual experiences that seem inseparable from the experience of sight itself. But Helen Keller didn't have access to this. And yet, she was deeply aware of the world in ways that many might find difficult to imagine. In her autobiography, The Story of My Life, Helen Keller speaks of her awakening to language as an almost spiritual transformation. When her teacher, Anne Sullivan, spelled words into her hand, it opened up an entirely new way for her to perceive and connect with the world. Through touch, she came to understand abstract concepts, emotions, and ideas. But this understanding was not mediated by the same sensory inputs that most people use. Did this mean her experiences were less real? Or simply different? Here's the paradox. While Keller could never experience the redness of red in the way that someone with sight does, she could still understand the idea of red. Through analogy, metaphor, and language, she built up a conceptual framework for colors. Anne Sullivan used tactile experiences and linguistic descriptions to help Keller understand colors in relation to emotions, temperatures, and even symbolic meanings. For instance, red might be explained to her as the feeling of warmth from the sun on her skin or the heat from a fire, something vibrant and intense. Red was also associated with passion and emotion. These associations, while not visual, allowed her to build a mental model of red. Keller herself reflected on this kind of conceptual understanding, saying that while she could never see the colors, she could grasp their symbolic importance. She once said, "We can never, I think, have a clear vision of all that life holds for us, or its true colors, until we touch it with our hearts." In a sense, Keller's understanding of red was one mediated through a different kind of qualia, an intellectual and emotional perception, rather than a sensory one. Does this mean she knew red in the way we know it? This depends on what we mean by knowing something. If we define knowledge purely in terms of sensory experience, say, the way a sighted person knows red, then no, Keller never knew red in that way. But if we define knowledge as a deeper, more abstract understanding of concepts, symbols, and feelings, then yes, Keller did know red, just differently. Her world was just as rich and meaningful, but constructed from a unique set of sensory experiences. This brings us back to qualia, those private, subjective experiences. Keller's qualia, if we could call them that, were undoubtedly different from someone with full sensory access, but they were still rich and real in their own right. Her experience of the world, built largely on touch, smell, and taste, was a complete sensory world unto itself. She may not have had the visual qualia of red, but she had her own embodied experiences of intensity, warmth, and passion that could mirror what we associate with red. A philosophical reflection. Keller's case shows us that qualia are more than just the raw data of our senses. They are part of a larger framework of meaning. The redness of red is not only the physical sensation of light waves striking the retina, but also what we associate with red: emotion, temperature, energy. Keller could understand these symbolic aspects of red through her own sensory inputs. While she never experienced visual red, she could still construct an understanding of what red meant. This makes me wonder, how important is the sensory medium for knowing something? Does the redness of red necessarily require the visual experience of red, or can it be understood through a completely different kind of sensory or cognitive framework? In Keller's case, her mind constructed a world rich with meaning, even if it didn't rely on the traditional qualia we associate with vision. In the end, Helen Keller might not have known red as you or I do, but she knew the world in ways that were profound and deeply connected to human experience. Her understanding of red may not have been visual, but it was certainly vivid in its own way. She knew warmth, passion, and the intensity of life. Perhaps in some ways, she knew red better than any of us.